Good evening, and thank you for joining the Mill Creek Township School District 6th through 12th grade virtual question and answer session, and taking the time to listen to the questions shared by your fellow parents and Mill Creek community members. I'm Mike Linder. I'm one of 9 elected school board directors, and I'll be moderating the questions tonight with the Return to School Task Force. Before we get started, I wanted to give you an overview of how the session will be conducted, and also let you know that we'll be recording this session to be available online on our YouTube channel for those unable to watch this evening. Additionally, in order to allow for the maximum number of attendees at the virtual question and answer, we set this session up on YouTube rather than Zoom, which would have limited the number of participants on the call. A link to a live questionnaire form has been posted in the comments section on the YouTube for attendees to submit any follow-up questions throughout the live session this evening. Our school communications coordinator, Katie McCaglia, will be monitoring the responses and recording them for the Return to School Task Force Committee to answer if time allows this evening. If your question is not able to be answered during the live event, it will be presented to the Return to School Task Force to be included in the updated frequently asked questions at www.mtsd.org/RTS. Following the Monday school board meeting on July 27th, we will be reviewing the health and safety plan, which will be presented to the school board for approval. We will share that plan with our families, staff, and students upon approval. In advance of the Pennsylvania Department of Education school reopening guidelines being released, the Mill Creek Township School District developed the Return to School Task Force, created in May 2020. Our task force has been organized around 4 primary areas: learning, resources, wellness, and communications, with representatives from various departments within the district, including curriculum, special education, psychologists, guidance counselors, nursing, safety, as well as administrators from each of the education levels. The MEA Vice President and a school board member. The Return to School Task Force is following the guidance provided by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the Erie County Department of Health, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The decisions, plans, procedures, and options being developed for the school reopening are being directly driven by state and local guidelines. Our task force is led by Assistant Superintendent and Co-Acting Superintendent Ms. Darcy Mosley. Darcy has been leading the Return to School Task Force as well as meeting with the Intermediate Unit 5 superintendents throughout the Return to School planning. The Intermediate Unit 5 contains 17 school districts in Erie, Warren, and Crawford counties. Those include the ones closest to us, to Mill Creek: Erie City, Fort LaBeouf, General McLean, Girard, Harbor Creek, Iroquois, Northeast, and Wattsburg. Ms. Mosley, could you now provide us with an overview and update of where the task force is in the planning process?
Yes, thank you very much. So on June 29th, we began with our presentation of Draft 1 of our Health and Safety Plan, as well as our Return to Play Plan to our school board. That was approved at that time, and in that plan, it was largely driven under the premise that green would mean go. We were working with several restrictions, such as the 180-day, 900 and 990-hour requirements, and those requirements were really bootstrapping us in terms of our ability to be flexible. If we did not have all of our students attending every day, we were not able to give credit and meet that legislative requirement. So also simultaneously, we had surveyed our staff and students, our families, and community, and we had an overwhelming response in the 3, 4, and 5 range, which was indicative that our families wanted us to be returning to school. I think a lot of that was driven by the fact that, we had an abrupt end to the school year, and people were looking, to get back to, the way school had been run. So we had those answers. As we look forward now, from the last month, we've had a distinct shift of that pendulum. When we recently resurveyed all of our staff, students, parents, and families, we found that an overwhelming response was now in the 1s and 2s, the very uncomfortable and uncomfortable ranges. And so those, data points, as well as recent information that has come out from the governor, have really driven us to be at the point where we're ready to bring forward draft number 2. The governor's social distance requirement of 6 feet, further clarifying that the CDC guideline there must be utilized, as well as the mandate for masking, have driven a lot of the decisions and discussions our task force has had recently. In addition, PDE has put out guidance relative to that 180-day or 990-hour requirement, which allows us, as long as we are taking attendance both for face-to-face instruction as well as virtual instruction, to credit us with days towards that 180-day requirement. So we're seeing, that the state is also moving in the same direction as some of the, parent and community feedback that we're receiving. We have been very lucky in the fact that we've had 376 questions submitted for last night's town hall as well as tonight. And that really tells us, along with the number of people that tuned in last night and hopefully the number of people that will turn in tonight, that we have a community that's very interested and wants to be a part of our planning. On July 27th, Monday evening at 6 o'clock, we will be bringing forth our draft number 2 of our plan. That plan is really going to center around our family's abilities to have choice so that they can look at the options that are presented to the board, and we can make a decision as to what will best meet our community's needs. We realize that nothing that's decided will be perfect for every family, but we really want to focus in on, that safety piece as being our North Star, that we want to ensure to the best of our abilities that all of our students, K-12, as well as our staff, are as safe as possible. I know some of the feedback from last night really kind of honed in and asked some questions about masking. It's really, something that is a, very personal topic for everyone. It not only calls into play what our personal beliefs are, our personal, levels of comfort and safety when we are interacting with other people, but also we are educators, and, that's the reason that we're here. And so as educators, us, providing a good role model to our families and our students by, following guidelines, masking up is the best practice. And so as we sit here tonight, for the most part, we're almost 6 feet around in each area, as best as we can do with the built-in table situation. We do want to make sure that we are modeling best practices. So we are masked this evening. I know the challenges that brings in terms of people being able to have that kind of personal touch and see those social cues that occur when you can see someone's face. But please know that behind these masks, we are smiling, we are happy to be here, and we are so glad that you are in the audience this evening.
Darcy, thank you for the update and the additional information on the process for the return to school task that, of course, has been working through. We're now going to move into the questions submitted to the task force prior to tonight's event. As Darcy mentioned to you, the questions have been categorized by topic, including capacity, communication, learning, resources, disinfecting, food service, masks, transportation, schedule, and wellness. So we're going to get started tonight with capacity, which falls under learning. Dr. Kavanaugh is chairing that committee for us. So, John, the first question is for you tonight, and the biggest question. How many kids are going to be in the classroom?
The number of students in each classroom will vary based on the building and the class. It will also depend on if we return with all students or under a proposed AB schedule option.
Thank you. So, the follow-up to that, obviously, is will there be enough room in the class for social distancing? And are all the kids going to have to wear masks all day long?
Good question. In many cases, under the proposed AB option, yes. But if not, if everyone is back at once, they will need to be masked. We must be able to maintain the 6 feet for social distancing in order to have masks removed.
Thank you, John. I know that it's been a big change from last year, so we're looking for what it's going to be like this coming year. So can you talk to us a little bit about what the environment in school will be like for my child as it relates to the new Department of Education guidelines on social distancing for gym, lunch, and other sorts of events?
One of the best things to say is it will be very different from what students have been used to. The students will be masked, social distancing will be expected. What physical education classes will look like will depend on the level and the schedule. We are currently meeting with all K-12 departments to review the various possibilities. Lunch will be in classrooms at the elementary level with social distancing at the secondary level. And at the high school, we've also added a fourth lunch to try to lower the numbers even more.
Appreciate that. Darcy, one of the other things that we're getting out there is, will the buildings be available to internal schools, clubs, groups, semi-internal, PTAs, boosters, and even our external Scouts MYA groups after school hours?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We recognize, first of all, how important those additional activities are to our students and our families. And we also recognize how important our facilities are so that some of the external groups, like that you mentioned, Mike, are able to have locations for their meetings and their activities. Our answer, to that is in starting the year, it's going to be, very limited. We're going to be looking at those requests on a case-by-case basis. And the reason for that is not to, deny anybody the opportunity to use our facilities, but really to allow us to, again, keep the safety of our staff and students at our decision-making through extra time. We know that, it's going to be challenging for our custodial staff and other staff to be able to maintain and socially sanitize and disinfect. So we need all time after school hours as possible to be able to do that efficiently. So we will review each request on a case-by-case basis. Some of those, may be things that are doable. Some may not. Outside activities certainly will be given a higher, and more preference because it's easier for us to control that environment versus indoor activities.
Thank you very much. And John, coming back to you, will we be able to do reading groups, centers, group partner work, and utilize libraries in the schools?
As we explained when we met with our teachers earlier in the week, these practices can happen, but they will be limited unless social distancing can be maintained. And the sharing of items needs to be avoided whenever possible.
That's good to hear. So are we planning to have some students remote for part of the week and the rest in school, and then vice versa? Can you kind of walk us through what that looks like at this point?
The proposed AB option would have the students attend school either on Monday and Wednesday or on Tuesday and Thursday to minimize class sizes. On the days that the students are not in school, they're expected to participate virtually with both synchronous or asynchronous instruction. This decision has not been finalized, but the AB hybrid option is still being discussed. It is one of the options that will be shared with the school board on Monday night.
Thank you. So some of the things that we do, the normal safety stuff, fire drills, lockdown drills, tornado drills, will those still happen, and how will we be able to do that safely?
And we do believe that those will still happen, and we see the necessity of it. But at the present time, we are still awaiting guidance from PDE regarding the expectations for how we can safely complete these drills this year.
Appreciate that. So, one of the big questions is, if a teacher, parent, or sibling of a student gets COVID-19, how should we inform the school, and will the days of absence be taken out of their 10-day allotment?
I think I can take this question, Mike. This school year, we've tried to provide for a little bit of flexibility, knowing that we're going to have some increased absences. So we have moved from 10 to 18 days for parents and guardians to write excuses for their students. This is part of, like I said, that increased flexibility. We will be using and working with parents as we assume there will be a rise in absences. In a situation where there is a positive COVID-19 case in your household, we'd ask you please contact the administration at your student's schools. They will work with you in conjunction with the district pandemic coordinator to help take the next steps.
Thank you. That was Scott Quivy. He is our chair for the communication task force here. John, coming back to you, will students be allowed to carry their backpacks to eliminate congregating time in the hallways?
This has been discussed in great detail, but in the end, we felt that allowing the students to carry backpacks raises other safety concerns. So at the present time, backpacks will not be allowed. We are developing plans to eliminate and stagger locker times at the secondary level, and an AB option would also assist us with this concern.
Excellent. Darcy, there's a lot of different ideas out there. One of them is plastic dividers. Is that something we're considering?
It absolutely is. So quite honestly, we are considering as many different options to be creative and inspire our students and our teachers to be able to replicate those critical learning experiences. Plastic dividers, is one way that we are able to allow for some closer proximity for smaller group work or individual work, and still allow to, have a protective barrier to have those more interpersonal exchanges. We have purchased several already. We have them on hand. and we are continuing to purchase the resources that our staff needs to be successful. One drawback we have had, and it's just important to note, is as many of you know, right now when you used to be able to place that Amazon Prime order and you knew within 2 days you had it, and that's kind of changed with COVID. Much of the same, phenomena has occurred with the district. When we've been trying to, make some purchases, we do experience some back orders and some delayed, shipping opportunities. But wherever possible, we, are getting the equipment that we need so that we can all be as safe as possible.
Thank you. John, this one's for you. We ended the year a little abruptly last year. So some of our students coming out of elementary and out of middle school would have had an opportunity for orientations with the middle school or the high school. How are we going to address that issue?
Yeah, it is very important as students transition into new buildings that we do provide something to make them feel welcome and make them feel comfortable. So this year we will be offering virtual orientations for our students that are transitioning to the new buildings. Communications will be sent out from building administrators in the next few weeks.
Thank you. That's good to hear. Switching gears a little bit to the next topic of communications, we're going to go to Scott, and he's going to help us through some of these. So how will we be notified if a person is considered a potential contact with an infected person?
So first, let me kind of cover that definition a little bit. The Department of Health is responsible for notifying anyone who has been identified as being exposed to a person who has tested positive for COVID-19. However, our district will also be running a parallel investigation in an attempt to reduce the number of people exposed and allow testing and self-quarantines to begin sooner. Therefore, it is likely that the pandemic coordinator or district administrator may contact students or staff prior to the Erie County Department of Health. While we're speaking about communication, I want to take a minute to stress the importance to our parents to make sure that your information on Infinite Campus is up to date. This is where the school district will look to find contact information if there are any concerns regarding a student. Directions on how to do this can be found on our RTS webpage. While I'm speaking of our RTS webpage, this is the one spot for all information regarding our return to school. Simply click on the banner at the top of the MTSD homepage. This is where you'll find our health and safety plan, our return to play plan, as well as a variety of other topics regarding our return to school. Our social media channels have also been launched on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please follow at Mill Creek SD to be notified of important updates made to the RTS pages and to stay up to date on everything that is happening in our district.
Thank you, Scott. The next couple questions are going to be related to disinfecting and food services, and we'll be asking Officer Spiker, who's chairing our wellness committee, to follow up on these. So Nate, our first question is, what are the rules going to be for drinking fountains, especially ones in classrooms?
So we have, in the elementaries we talked last night, is where we have classrooms with the fountains inside. Those will just be used for filling bottles, washing hands, but tonight we're kind of focused on the secondary piece, and drinking fountains are not going to be used to drink from them directly from the spout. They will be operational, permitted for filling bottles or cups only. Staff will instruct and monitor to ensure that drinking directly from the fountain doesn't take place. Furthermore, drinking fountains will be disinfected by custodial staff throughout the day, and signs should be placed next to each drinking fountain to instruct students and staff to not drink directly from the fountain. And as you can see, the sign is visible on the screen right now.
Thank you. So I know one of the big questions is, with sanitizing. Will students be allowed to sanitize things in the classroom during the day, or will we be expecting teachers to do that?
That's a great question, and one that we're dealing with every day, trying to find some good solutions. We're working through our options to assist with sanitizing items in a classroom so that we're not asking students to be involved with this cleaning. Teachers, although not required, are permitted to sanitize items in the classroom if they want to. All of this, including the cleaning of books, desks, computers, Chromebooks, and other items, should be outlined in the next revision of our health and safety plan.
Thank you for that. As we're talking about cleaning, some of the disinfectants take quite a bit of time to be effective and to kill viruses. So will it still be effective, our plan?
Yes, there's so many options out there as you referred to. So we're really looking forward to our pandemic coordinator who will be working with the custodial services to make this recommendation for disinfectants of what our custodians use and what may be used throughout the day, as those things could be different.
Thank you. Changing up a little bit for you here for food service. Regarding lunch at the high school level, and assigned seating, do you have a means to have a specific number of chairs per table, or are we actually going to assign students to specific seats?
Yeah, so as Dr. Kavanaugh alluded to a little bit earlier, we are planning to social distance our students as well as add that fourth lunch, making it a little bit easier to do so. Administrators are working hard to assign students to specific tables. So that will be something that students should look forward to.
Okay. So as they're going through the lunch lines, will the students be using touchpads or scanners?
Yeah, so shared touchpads will be available, as will the scanners. We are currently reviewing our equipment to ensure all scanners are working in order to use with student IDs in order to limit the use of touchpads by students. In addition of using scanners, the cashiers will also be available to enter a student's ID number, and this is a great option that we're also looking at.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And back to you, John, to really talk about the real reason for school learning. Are there any plans to provide virtual learning by putting cameras in the classrooms for those who feel uncomfortable sending their children to school?
For those that feel uncomfortable sending their children to school, we will be offering the MTSD Cyber Academy, which will be 100% online instruction. There is an informational meeting being held on Tuesday night, the 28th, at 6 p.m. There is also a synchronous learning option that is still being discussed, which would allow for students to participate in lessons from home, but we will not be adding cameras to the classroom. We do not need cameras in the classroom at this point because teachers' hardware can allow us this to occur.
Excellent. That's great to hear. So, we definitely want you, if this is something you're interested in, make sure you're tuning in to the Tuesday night town hall and the Cyber Academy. Along with that, let's talk a little bit more about the hybrid AB model. So will students be on scheduled Zoom calls at home with their teacher when they're not reporting to the building?
This is a possibility as part of the synchronous learning option that is being proposed. The AB hybrid option could also be asynchronous, with instruction being provided through the use of Google Classroom on the days the students are not in school for face-to-face instruction. Virtual learning is provided for the AB hybrid option on Friday for all students. After the new plan is approved on Monday night by the school board, we will know which options we will be offering, and then we will share more specific details with all of our families regarding this on next Tuesday.
Thanks, John. The one big question I've heard a lot out there. So what is the difference between virtual learning and the Mill Creek Cyber Academy?
Very good question, and we have the graphic up there to help support different parts of this. The main thing is the Mill Creek Township School District Cyber Academy provides online instruction from trained online teachers. Please attend the informational meeting next week for more information. The virtual instruction would be our MTSD teachers on Friday under the proposed AB hybrid option. Virtual instruction may also be provided under the synchronous learning option that is being proposed, but virtual is our Mill Creek teachers teaching.
Thank you. So if we choose the Mill Creek Cyber program, can we choose it at any time of the year?
You can choose it, but what we're asking families is to please try to make this move at a natural break in the schedule, which would be the end of the quarter or the end of the semester. That will help transition the students the easiest.
Thanks. I know one of the big questions out there also is, if I'm not comfortable sending my child to school in a mask and socially distancing, what are my options?
Well, we hope to have a few different options, and the options for families that will keep their students home during this time would be the MTSD Cyber Academy or the synchronous learning plan that is being proposed.
Thanks. I know as a parent last year, this question strikes really close to home. So will teachers have virtual office hours for students to ask questions on the days they're not in remote learning?
Yes, this is very important. The plan for virtual office hours is being developed, but yes, teachers will be asked to hold office hours to support their students. How this will look will depend on the proposed AB hybrid option and how that goes on Monday.
Excellent. And this other one really is also, is the district going to be putting together parent training geared towards navigating the district's online curriculum and how we can best help our children from home? This would potentially help keep students on course with the curriculum and probably give us a little sanity.
Yeah. I would say that this answer is a little twofold. Part of it is if you go to the Mill Creek Cyber Academy, we are providing the training on Tuesday night, and we'll also be posting a variety of information on the website. But if it was to be virtual through our own teachers teaching it and needing to understand Google Classroom better, yes, we'll be also providing that training to both students and their parents.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, John. And over to you, Darcy. This question has two parts to it. So how are we planning to overcome the possible gaps in learning? And then how do we envision overcoming the gaps between in-person student learning experiences and virtual student learning experiences?
Yeah, thank you. So I'll take the first. In March, if you would have told me, when we had that first announcement of the closure, that we would end up being out the rest of the year, I would not have believed that. It was just something that I was not able to fathom. And I think most of us, as educators and as moms, I'll speak as a mom, really were taken aback by that. And so we know that our students missed out on a lot of quality hours of instruction. We also know that our students really benefit from having that expert, in front of them in a classroom in a live face-to-face environment. We, also know that it is the connectedness that a student makes to their teacher that largely drives, their success. So knowing that we didn't have some of those things to offer our students under the closure, we do anticipate that there will be gaps in the instruction that they received and their skills. As our students are coming back, we're poised to do, diagnostic work to see where our students are, see what those, skill needs may be, and to address them appropriately. In addition, we have also been looking at ways that we can compact our curriculum. So focusing on what are the most essential pieces so that we can address, areas where students may need some additional support due to that lack of face-to-face instruction in the spring. For the second piece to that question, how are we going to overcome possible gaps if, someone is doing online work or face-to-face work this fall? I think that it is our hope that through the various plan options that we will be presenting, that we have an option that allows for that synchronous learning opportunity. So students can really, benefit from, either being face-to-face or virtual with instruction, and focusing in on the engagement piece, making sure that our students, have strong communication with their teachers. They are able to see their teachers and connect with them, and, gain as much through that instructional experience, whether it's face-to-face or virtual, as possible.
Thank you very much. That helps with that a lot. So one of the other big concerns is, if our student has a 504 and IEP to be followed and adapted to addresses that can be addressed in the event that we have to go from in class to at home, how are we going to handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So we know that our students who are identified with, specific needs, those are families that we're already connected with. They're families that we already work with in order to meet those students' individual needs. So the first thing that I would say is we would encourage those families to reach out to your building principals or your, special education supervisors or the pupil services department. We definitely want to be able to take an individualized approach for those students in order to meet their needs. We also recognize that, students who are our students with the greatest need may need to be in the building more. They may need that face-to-face that I just talked about, that kind of opportunity to be connected to their teacher in a face-to-face environment more than other students who may be able to, navigate a virtual environment a little more readily. So what I would encourage our parents to do is if you have a child that has a 504 or an IEP, please connect with us. We want to talk with you. We want to make sure that, your child's plan is truly individualized and it meets the needs so that we can, transition between face-to-face or virtual as needed, and still meet their goals and help them be successful learners.
Thank you. So, John, back to you. I know last year we only permitted one device per family. Is that still going to be the same for this upcoming year?
No, this year will look much different. Last year, as we went into it, as Mrs. Mosley described earlier, it was under that pandemic phase and being new to it. This year, we know it will benefit our students, so all students will have a Chromebook. They will have one-to-one access and the ability to bring that home. So at some point when we do end up in virtual learning, which we likely will, they will be serviced that way.
Excellent. In talking about the virtual and the technology piece, Google Classroom is going to be our platform this year. So will students and parents be trained on that platform?
Yes, that'll be one of the main focuses, and I can tell you this because I've sat in on 3 different Google Classroom trainings this week so far with many of our teachers. Our teachers will be further training our students when they come back at the beginning of the year, and we'll also provide some training through virtual and through the website for our teachers and our parents.
Thank you. So this is a concern from some parents that they're asking about the virtual learning environment, and they feel that Google Classroom isn't enough for virtual learning for our kids, and still get the actual instruction from their teachers. Then parents submit the work. Is this an option for the coming year? What are we supplementing with?
Yeah, and this can again be answered in two ways. The Mill Creek Cyber Academy, if somebody wanted to go 100% virtual, or if they were still interested in the instruction by our teachers, the synchronous learning model. We do agree that just utilizing the Google Classroom does not provide enough the way it is currently done, was currently done in the spring.
And this is just a follow-up. I think this is pretty easy for you, but can the district put together parent training and geared towards parents for navigating the district's curriculum? And I think that, again, we really are talking about going to the Tuesday night meeting to talk about the Cyber Academy. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I would encourage parents to reach out to their building administrators. If there's some training that they feel they need that would help them with their students when their students are learning virtually, I think the building administrators would be the first point of contact and will be glad to assist to provide that training or point them in the direction for that training.
John, thank you very much. We're going to change a little bit now, and we're going to talk about masks. And Nate, if you can help walk us through some of these. When and where will students be required to wear a mask while in the buildings?
Well, first, Mike, I want to thank you for saving these highly emotional questions for me. Mask wearing is something that we have found has been somewhat divisive. But we are looking out for the best safety and wellness of our school and our students and our staff. So everyone will be required to wear a mask in and out of the building during class transitions, within 6 feet of others, as well as to the maximum extent as feasible.
So, thank you for that. I mean, I know our first goal is to make sure that all of our students are safe, so I appreciate that. But that always comes with the follow-up. What happens if they're not going to wear their mask?
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, we are still dealing with kids from K through 12, and we all have our moments where you refuse to do something and you're asked to do. So if a student refuses to wear a mask, teachers will be encouraged to manage their classroom with rules and support to support the building discipline matrix as well as the health and wellness model. But should a student refuse to wear a mask, teachers should encourage their student to wear it, to provide them with the opportunity to physically provide a mask should they not have one. But then if the student still refuses after a reasonable attempt has been made, then the teacher is going to request the administrator's help on this one. The administrator will come to the classroom, or the student will be escorted to the isolation area until an administrator is available. And at the high school level and middle schools really is what we're talking about. The administration will then warn the student, provide them with a mask, encourage the student to wear it, give them context as to why it's important for the bigger purpose, and then they will inform the student of the potential discipline that exists for insubordination. So that's where this would fall under the discipline matrix, under insubordination. And then if they still refuse to wear it after all of that, then the administrator will utilize the discipline matrix, escort the student to an isolation room, and they'll either wear a mask or a parent will have to pick them up from the building.
Okay. Thank you. I think you answered the other one. So, if a student were to forget a mask.
Yes, we're well aware that that's a possibility. Sometimes they may not have one. Sometimes they break theirs. These ear things break sometimes. So, our district is stocking up on resources so that we'll have those available as needed. But the expectation is that students are prepared and come to school with a mask. That's the expectation.
And I know I heard this in this little off script here, but what type of mask? Any mask? I mean, I have a homemade mask on.
Yeah,
we're good with.
So if you look around, Mike, you're wearing a homemade cloth mask. I'm wearing what they call a surgical mask. That's okay too. So cloth or surgical would be fine. They can also, any parent can look at the CDC website or the Erie County Health Department website, as well as our Return to School Task Force page to get some additional information on what type of masks are acceptable.
Thank you. And Darcy, if you can help us, how will teachers work with students to comply with wearing a mask throughout the day?
Yeah, so, from me as an educator, I think the first, piece to that question is that I want the teachers to be fully engaged and able to be doing the instruction. So, much like Nate said, for me, it's a simple ask, perhaps at the start, but after that, I really want it to be something that is handled between parent communication and, our administration. Certainly, I want an educational piece there, explaining why it's important, explaining, that it is a requirement for our older students, and then, helping to ensure that our students are able to comply with that expectation. For our littlest of folks, I think the teacher piece looks a little different. Obviously, as you've seen, I sit here and fidget. It slides off my nose. I have to pull it back up, and I'm much older than our littlest of learners. So, I think there you will see it look a little different. Teachers will be engaged, with their students in helping them tighten masks or reminding them to put it back on, because certainly it's going to be coming off. And I think teacher engagement will look different across the levels, as it should. It should be an opportunity to approach the masking topic with our students from an age-appropriate stance.
Excellent, thank you. So if some of our students have pre-existing conditions such as asthma, anxiety, autism, will they be permitted not to wear a mask?
Yes. So the governor's mandate allows for, families to indicate to us that there is a need and that they would not be masking. We've actually already sent home information to our families, asking our families to reach out to us if you have any concerns, whether your children are immunocompromised, medically fragile, high need students, if there are other reasons that you may, need to have consideration. So if you have a concern such as that, please communicate that with your school nurse or your building principal. You can also work through the pupil services department for the district. Really just reaching out will be able to answer any questions specifically and get them the answer that they need, but as well as, recognize that need and they would be exempt.
Okay, thank you. And kind of going along with the masks, we're going to ask them to wear it for the day at times, for periods. Will they be able to have opportunities to take a break from wearing their mask, and where can't they do that?
Yeah, those are great questions. So, first, like I hate the image that we have little people sitting in a desk all day masked. So that's really the reason that we have been exploring other options, ways that we can decrease the number of students that are in our classrooms so that we can ensure we have that 6x6 area with the student at the center and they can unmask. We know when we can appropriately social distance, they can unmask. So in a classroom that has a reduced number of students and is set up appropriately, students will not need to be masked the entire time they are in class. There will be some places throughout the building, though, that they will need to mask up. Again, it's those common areas. It's when they're entering the building and exiting the building for the day, and when they're within, closer to someone else within 6 feet. So in terms of breaks, I absolutely anticipate there will be breaks for all of our students. It just needs to be done under the right socially distanced situations. This question specifically asks about taking the mask break in the hallway. That wouldn't be an area where we would do a mask break unless it was a situation where classes were staggered and you appropriately, like maybe you're on the bathroom break in the elementary school and everyone's socially distanced, then you could do that. But if it's a mass transitional time, then that would not be the time for a break. And we will be indicating those transition patterns, those traffic patterns, much like you see when you go to Walmart with their, floor signage. We will be doing things similarly to indicate our traffic patterns, our stairwells for the middle and high school buildings that have multiple floors, so that we have stairwells that are ups and downs. So we will try to make it as easy and clear to understand as possible.
Thank you. That's good to hear. John, a little bit talking about schedule. So what are the start and finish times this year?
The start and finish times have not changed, so they'll maintain that the school day will start at 7:50 and end at 2:40.
And then will we still be doing block scheduling?
Yes, at the high school level, we are maintaining our normal schedule for the year.
Okay. With the hybrid model, John, and the AB schedule, will children from the same family be guaranteed to be on the same schedule of days they are in school and the days they are going to be doing online learning?
Absolutely. We need to make it as convenient for the families as we can, so we are already utilizing our student management system, Infinite Campus, to go through and make sure that the students are divided by households so they would be together.
Thank you for that, sincerely. I have two, so I appreciate they'll be on the same day. We're going to move now to transportation, and this is going to fall to Nate also under the Wellness Committee. Nate, can you talk to us about how are we able to allow 2 students per seat on the bus during the green phase?
Yeah, this is a great question and one that we spend a significant amount of time on. Not all buses will have 2 students per seat. Logistically, we're anticipating everybody coming back at some point. So with a district our size, it may be that two people are assigned per seat. It's just not economically or logistically feasible for us to offer transportation while assigning 1 student per seat and still get everybody to school. That being said, if we go to an AB, format, that may open up some options for us to, put several of those buses to 1 per seat if feasible. But we really won't know that until we see, 1, if we're going to accept that AB model, or 2, how many students are willing to come back to school.
Okay, thank you. So will our children have their temperature taken before they get on the bus?
No, we're asking that this be the responsibility of the parent or guardian. The school will passively screen body temperatures with thermal cameras upon entering the school building. So the way that day looks is we're expecting parents and guardians to take the temperature of a student. Should they have a normal body temperature, they can board the bus. And then once a student comes to school, those thermal cameras will do the passive screen. And then should an elevated body temperature be alerted during that piece, we would go to the next step for screening, which I'll get to a little bit later in the night.
Thank you. And I believe this question's for John or Darcy. It's still about transportation, but will there be a Tuesday, Thursday activity bus?
Yeah, that one's mine. So the activity bus that we've had at the high school has always been, a very nice opportunity for us to provide transportation at staggered times beyond the end of the school day. However, this year we will not be able to offer that service, and it's really for twofold reasoning. One, we need all of the buses as possible to be out in circulation to try to minimize the number of students on those routes. So we want to utilize all buses for regular routing. Another reason for that is, as I had mentioned earlier, we are really going to be looking on a case-by-case basis as to what those activities are taking place after the school day ends. We want to have enough time with our buildings to be as empty as possible in order to disinfect. So we're going to be limiting, what those in-person after-school activities look like. So we don't anticipate the need that we've had in the past in terms of offering that service. So for at least the fall semester of the 2021 school year, we will not be running the activity bus for the high school.
That's understandable. Nate, how is car rider drop-off and pickup going to occur, and how are we going to keep them socially distanced?
Another good question. Adjustments are being made to ensure social distancing during this phase of loading and unloading buses as well as car riders. If you're a parent or a student out there and you have some questions regarding, the car rider piece, I would encourage you to contact your building administrator for some direction. But what we anticipate is that they'll be dismissing car riders and dismissing specific buses, as well as the reverse loading cars and buses at a very systematic way so that not everybody's just scrambling at the same time. If you're familiar with the way things go at schools over the last few years or forever, as soon as somebody rolls up, they all spill out and they, infiltrate the school through the main doors. So what we're trying to do is avoid that by dismissing them, 1 at a time, 2 at a time, whatever's feasible to remain that, 6 feet distance.
Thank you. And then a little more for you, Nate, but not on transportation, but on wellness now. So the reopening plan talks about sending a child home for 14 days when they're ill. Is this only if they are positive for COVID or for any illness?
Well, so parents are always encouraged to keep their students home if they're experiencing any signs of illness, and especially during this pandemic. If you remember in March when this first kind of hit, we were encouraging workers not to show up to work if they were experiencing illness, visitors to come to buildings and so forth. So I think everybody's kind of familiar with that protocol. So if a student is experiencing any types of symptoms, we ask they stay home. But if a student is sent home because they have been identified as being exposed to a positive case, that's a little different. They will be asked to stay home for 14 days, as is protocol.
So carrying on with that theme here, what symptoms would require a student to stay home sick? Traditionally, if has been a fever, but if cold symptoms were okay to attend.
Yeah, so we have a graphic which our nurses will be using to kind of examine our students that may have some sort of symptom or an elevated body temperature as they enter the school. And on that graphic, it really details out just the question that you asked. But I'll answer it here for the purpose of the Q&A. Anyone who's experiencing fever, shortness of breath, coughing, they will be asked to go home, as well as multiple cold symptoms. And they should stay home until those symptoms have been resolved.
Okay, thank you. So what steps are taken after a teacher or staff member tests positive for COVID?
Well, this is a question that I think everybody's waiting for the answer to. The district will notify the Erie County Department of Health first, and then our pandemic coordinator will begin the contact tracing piece.
Okay, so you talked about a couple things there. Can you explain to us what contact tracing is and what exposed means?
Yeah, absolutely. Contact tracing is the process of identifying, notifying, and monitoring anyone who came into close contact with an individual who tested positive for COVID-19. And that's while they were infectious 48 hours prior to the onset of symptoms. So if you're listening, if I were testing positive, I would have to then be interviewed as far as and identify the people that I was in contact with 48 hours from when the symptoms first started, not when I was tested positive. And then contact tracing, it's key for preventing the further spread of this infectious disease. And then the second part of that question, close contact is defined as anyone who's within 6 feet of an infected person for 15 minutes or longer. Close contacts of a case are considered to have been exposed to COVID-19, and they may go on to develop the disease. So identifying and quarantining close contacts really limits their ability to spread the disease should they become infectious, and helps limit community spread, which is the desired goal here. So those who have been exposed will be asked to take the COVID-19 test and self-quarantine until cleared by a physician or the Erie County Department of Health.
Nate, thank you for clearly outlining that. The follow-up to that, and I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but who is ultimately responsible for this plan?
Right, so our district has identified that the pandemic coordinator will manage this while working with the nursing staff and the personnel department.
Okay. And then, as a follow-up, who's able to require students to isolate or quarantine?
So the pandemic coordinator, obviously, nurses, as well as any of the building administrators, all have the authority within the school district to recommend that quarantine or isolation.
Okay. So is the full class of a teacher quarantined if the teacher is positive?
That's a question that will be determined by the contact tracing process, but I can answer that as probably, because they will likely have been identified as exposed to because of the 6 feet over 15-minute requirement.
So I know that the follow-up to that is, are household family members required to quarantine as well?
Yeah, that's another good question. The school district will request the quarantine of all district students who have been identified through the contact tracing process. However, the Department of Health may determine non-students to quarantine and will be responsible for making that request. So in short, the school district will not be ordering quarantines for non-students.
I know we talked a little bit about this and you said we were going to come back to it. So will teachers and students be required to have daily temperature checks?
So parents and guardians, again, are required to take temperatures of students prior to sending them to school. As I noted, we are installing thermal cameras that will be in place to passively screen students and staff as they enter the building. Nurses will then conduct a formal health screening should the thermal camera alert that there's an elevated body temperature.
Thank you. So for those students that are moved to isolation area during the school day, will they be required to quarantine, or only those that are positive for COVID and exposed?
Yeah, only those whose screenings result in further testing or have been identified as a positive contact will be asked to quarantine. If a student screened and identified as safe to return to school by a nurse or a physician, they'll obviously not be asked to quarantine and permitted back in school.
Okay. So what happens if a music teacher or a lunch server or a staff member who engages with a large number of our student population becomes ill, how does that impact the entire school?
Yeah, it could greatly impact the entire school. What we will do is we'll do the contact tracing piece of it. That will end up determining the next step. And likely we'll move to a virtual option because the majority of the school would likely be affected in a case like that.
Okay. Can you outline the process for if a student visits the nurse with any form of illness and explain what to isolation rooms?
Yeah, absolutely. The nurse's office will handle day-to-day operations. Each building has also identified an isolation area where screening and quarantine will take place. The nurse's office will still be the primary location of care. If further assessment is needed for COVID-19 screening, then the student will be escorted down to the isolation room for that.
So if my child is required to quarantine either from illness or exposure, how will coursework be provided to the student, and will there be leniency for due dates? And I'm going to look to Darcy or John.
Oh, I can answer it. It's fine. The coursework will continue to be provided through the Google Classroom. And the leniency and due dates will be based on the doctor's excuses, which kind of leads into our next question.
So the initial health and safety plan did not address chorus or art programs, and local theaters have canceled shows through 2021. Singing is said to not be safe, and theaters have closed through 2021 also due to being unable to social distance from the beginning of rehearsals to performance. So have these programs been canceled?
Yeah, so I jumped the gun a little bit. The doctor's excuse is a couple questions down that Darcy will answer, but for this question, it's difficult for this district to deal with the cancellation of these performances. It's something that personally I look forward to. It brings a lot of joy to see the talent in this district and to really focus the attention on our students and what they're capable of. But it's important for us also to understand as a school building, the instructional piece has not been canceled at all. That will continue in the classroom. Students will continue to improve upon their talents. But for the time being, under the circumstances, we have to unfortunately cancel those performances.
Thank you. That is unfortunate, but understandable. Darcy, if you can help me with how are schools monitoring students and staff who should be quarantined to ensure that they are not attending school?
Yes, so one of the challenges at the very beginning of the evening today, I talked about the 180-day requirement. So whether we are virtual or face-to-face, we are required to track attendance. So really, this question just kind of falls into line with what we would do if, we weren't in COVID, we'd be tracking attendance. And certainly within COVID, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, we're going to track attendance. When we are, involved with a case of somebody needing to be quarantined, we are required to have a running calendar that we track as part of the contact tracing requirement. So we will know the 14 days from the 2 days prior to the onset of symptoms for the person who is infectious, where that 14-day mark then falls for those who have been contact traced and need to quarantine. So we will be tracking that. In the event that a student who is to be quarantining would return to school early, we would simply ask that student to remain in our isolation area while we contacted their parent or guardian and had them come and be picked up.
Okay, thank you. So, Darcy, in regards to the daily temperature checks and mandatory 14-day quarantine with exposure or positive test, will the child be permitted to return to school sooner if they have a negative COVID test or the physician's note stating the temperature was from another illness?
Yes, so both of those, are certainly acceptable, as well as if they have a Department of Health's return to school notification. So if someone were home and they had finished their quarantine, or they had been home for something that ended up being another illness, they would return from their doctor's note, and they would also then return from, a Department of Health return to school notification. If it were a student athlete, then we would have the, athletic certification form submitted back to us indicating that they were cleared to return as well.
Okay. Thank you. That ends the questions that we'd received prior to this. Throughout the event tonight, we've received 50 follow-up questions for the task force. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the 6 through 12 question and answer session this evening. We're now going to move into the live submission for the next 15 minutes. And thank you for engaging with our task force here throughout the evening and this entire process. We truly value your opinion and your concerns. So we're going to do this, and it's going to be a little bit of a catch here. I'll try to target who this goes to, but anyone wants to jump in, please grab it. So how will the expectation of social distancing be enforced?
I'll take that one. So one of the things that we have done is we have already begun with our, building level administration as well as our central office administration doing walkthroughs of our building. In addition, we have signed up to work collaboratively with the Department of Health. They have formed what are called strike teams that will come out to all buildings and all classrooms and assess those areas to ensure that we have social distancing between our desks, tables. They will make recommendations as to furniture that may need to be removed so that we can efficiently socially distance. They will also look at the traffic patterns for, entering the building, exiting the building, transitioning from classroom areas, and help us, establish that as part of our health and safety plan, work with them. So we're very excited to collaborate with them as the community professionals and, certainly act upon their recommendations to make sure that we meet the social distancing expectations.
Thank you. So we did receive a number of follow-up questions specifically on the AB learning options that we'd like to address now. Darcy and John, if you can help, please assist with these next few. High school currently doesn't have an AB option in the current plan. How is this being modified?
Either one.
I can take that one. So as we look to Monday evening, we are, going back to our board with some alternate plans. Again, as I had stated in the start, we knew when we initially had that plan design that we were really, forced to be looking at a green means go situation. Now that we can take a step back, we also have the additional, mandates from the governor as well as that guidance from PDE. We can look to alter what we're doing. So for us at the high school level, much like what we had talked about, we would be utilizing the courses that our students were scheduled for to, run on an AB day. They would be here for their courses, face-to-face on one day and virtual on another. So it shouldn't be a great impact. Being on the 4x4 block, I think will naturally lend itself well to what we're doing. And, we will communicate all specifics about, calendars and family groupings, should that plan be, something that our board supports on Monday.
Okay, thank you. So would parents be able to choose if their children go on, say, a Monday, Wednesday, or a Tuesday, Thursday to better align with their work schedules?
We will initially do all of our groups, those family groupings to ensure all households are together will be done randomly. If there is, a specific need that a family would have, I would encourage them to reach out to their building principal and express that individualized need. The reason that we're doing it randomly is so that we can have as balanced numbers across all grade levels as possible. But we certainly want to also try to be attentive if there are specific familial needs that we need to attend to. So please reach out to your building administrator should you have a specific need.
So how will the AB schedule work on a shortened week, as in a 3 or 4 day week due to national holidays, for example?
Yeah, so what we will do, it's actually been constructed. So if things are move forward Monday night, we would roll out that calendar on the next day, which would indicate that. And it's just really built on, an AB concept that then just takes into account that, if you had a 3-day week, it would be an AB. And then the day that we would return from that holiday would start with a B, and we would continue. And while it's difficult to conceptualize just sitting here and for our audience, please know that we will give you a color-coded roadmap to help you should that be the way that we decide to move forward to make that as smooth as possible. And the days really do work out quite balanced as you look over quarters and semesters.
We also got a couple questions in here regarding school standardized testing, and John, I'm hoping you can help me with these. Has the state addressed testing PSSAs and Keystone for the 2021 school year?
At the present time for the 2021 school year, the Keystone and PSA has not been directly impacted and will go on as planned. Now that is subject to change. We work closely with our curriculum department, and as soon as we know more, both the students, teachers, and families will know more also.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions is, are students now allowed to carry a water bottle during the day without a doctor's note?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So we're encouraging kids to bring water bottles to school now so that they can fill in a safe manner. They're not going to be permitted to use the drinking fountains to drink directly out of them. So water bottles are encouraged to be brought. Now, with that being said, as a security officer, those sometimes cause some problems as we have of what's in the water bottles and those sort of things. Those will just be handled on a case-by-case basis as they always have been. So it really shouldn't cause any problems for anybody.
Okay, thank you, Nate. A couple of these questions, John, are on cyber, so if you can field these, I'd appreciate it. If a student is enrolled in VOTEC, can they also enroll in the cyber option?
Absolutely. If a student is enrolled in VOTEC, they would attend their day in the VOTEC in the morning from our level or in the afternoon at the high school level. And the opposite that, they would be allowed the cyber option.
Okay. And are virtual sessions, no matter what plan is approved, going to follow structured scheduling, i.e. a student has to be logged into English at 8 a.m., not whenever they feel like it, or what is that going to look like?
Absolutely. The schedule has not been officially developed yet, but once the plan is chosen, we will work on that. But there will be assigned times during the day where students and teachers will be on together.
Okay, thank you. Nate, a couple of these are looking like they might be for you here. So will school dances still be looked into and tried to make happen, such as prom, homecoming, semiformals, and maybe even on the football field if possible?
Yeah, so these are all great events, and we learned through graduation, that there are many options available. This will ultimately be guided, our decision will ultimately be guided by, what state we are, as far as orders from the governor himself, the Department of Health, and those things. As a school district, we'd like to see these things happen. Under the current plan, they will not be happening, but as we look forward to those dates, they're well into the future, and as we know, things change. So I'm optimistic that we'll be able to find an alternative for those things, should that time come. We're already starting to look at that.
Excellent. And then will travel time be increased for walking from class to class or building to building?
So I'm going to give this over to John just because of the instructional piece. I know that they're making some allotments for lunches and things.
At the present time, walking from class to class, the time will not be changed. The students are already given 10 minutes to go building to building and 5 minutes in the building. The fact that we should have less students in the building and specific travel patterns they must follow without stopping at the lockers as much as they normally do or stopping to talk, traveling to the classes should not be an issue.
Excellent. So if I have 4 kids who will be in 4 different buildings this year, will you be offering an in-person or at a minimum a virtual tour of the buildings and procedures?
Yes, we will be doing a very detailed orientation for all of our incoming freshmen. I know the middle schools are working on their virtual presentations also, but yes, at the present time, even though everything will be done virtual, we will be offering this for all of our families and all of our students.
Okay. And this is a good question for middle school here. Will students in the middle school be in groups? Will they stay in one classroom with the teacher moving, or will the students be moving from class to class?
The students will be moving from class to class because of the different levels that the classes are in, both at the academic and the honors level. So the students will be moving, but again, following specific travel patterns within their pods or within their hallways and at specific times.
Yeah, and I would just piggyback on that, just in case, I'm not sure what the first part of that meant, but will they still be in their teams? Absolutely. We really believe in the middle school philosophy and the importance of that team environment for our students. And we certainly do not want to lose that. Fortunately, our buildings are constructed in a way that it's very easy to facilitate that team kind of atmosphere. So students will still be identified as teams.
Okay. Will students still be able to take family and consumer science classes such as cooking and sewing?
I can take that one. So we will absolutely still have our electives. We believe it's very important for our students to be well-rounded students and have exposure to all types of arts. In the area of family and consumer science, you may see some things like, former labs becoming more demonstrative, or maybe a flipped kind of classroom environment where we're having a child, make a dish at home and video it and show it to us. We may be getting creative in how we are, doing some of that instruction, but it will still be taking place, and we're, very excited about that.
Okay. I know we were talking about this question a little bit earlier today amongst ourselves before the start of the meeting. So, if a teacher contracts COVID, who will teach the students? If you can find a substitute, will he or she will probably not be competent in that area to teach, and the affected teacher will not be able to create lessons plans while recuperating.
Yeah, so that's going to be a challenge, I think. You know, we have struggled as a district to have enough substitutes pre-COVID. So I certainly think that there could be continued struggles there, and we always strive to have folks in front of our students who are certified. What I do take heart in, though, is that we have a great partnership with our service provider for our substitutes, who we have been meeting with throughout the summer to work on the complement of people available to us to make sure that they are Google Classroom trained and have the access necessary to help. And we are also looking at having a few substitutes assigned to each of our buildings so that we always have a ready supply of folks should something occur throughout the day to try to have people on hand.
So what will happen when the virus is detected within the schools, and what are the thresholds for reevaluating on how the learning will take place?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think it was Nate who had mentioned it. Depending on where those, infected individuals may have been, will determine what areas of the building need to be closed. And when that does occur, it needs to be a 24-hour closure for a deep cleaning and disinfectant period. If it is a situation where, it was multiple people or the infected person had been throughout the entire building, it may require that whole building to be closed for that 24-hour period. So the plan with having one-to-one support in terms of the hardware for our students, as well as the Google Classroom as our common platform used K-12, we do hope that we will have things in place to try to, mitigate the issues when we do have to bounce back and transition from face-to-face to virtual instruction. It won't be flawless, but we hope to make it as seamless as possible this year.
Thank you. So one of the concerns is, will we be periodically auditing the schools in the district by visiting each school for compliance with the return to school plan to ensure the safety of our children?
Yes, we will. One of the requirements that we have from the state is to have a pandemic coordinator, and we're very excited about the opportunity to bring a pandemic coordinator on. This person will be participating in a specialized training through the Department of Health to help with some of those areas. We also will be formulating a pandemic team, who will be a team of individuals across a varied types of departments that will work with that pandemic coordinator. But there will absolutely be audits, and you will see our pandemic coordinator in our buildings on a regular basis.
Thank you. Has there been any communication with VOTEC students about virtual versus in-class learning, and will we be hosting a night dedicated specifically to those students?
I can answer part of that. The VOTEC instruction, obviously is set by the VOTEC administration and their board, and they are working on models. They are actually having their board meeting this evening. I know at their board meeting this evening, they were planning to take their plans forward. So depending on what way their board voted, will indicate for those sending schools what their schedule is going to look like. We do anticipate having that information very soon. I would think that VOTEC would be choosing to host the night for their parents to talk about their schedule. Typically, that would be a function of them as the service provider for the VOTEC kids. But if it's something that our families need additional information on, or you're feeling that you need assistance, connecting with someone at the VOTEC to get the necessary answers, please reach out to our principals, and we will help make those connections for you or help to get you the answers you need.
Thank you. This question, I'm sure, is greatly impacting a lot of our students. They probably want to know what is going to happen with their schedules. Will these be posted after the school board meeting? Has a date been identified when we will let them know?
We have always let our schedules be posted the first week of August. That has always happened. So we actually have been working to wrap up our scheduling process. The principals will be finished by tomorrow so that we have an extra week of time next week to prepare. But depending on what model is chosen, we are ready to roll out schedules as well as any type of alternate calendar and family groupings. We will have all information that'll be prepared to come out. So we're actually going to be ahead with all indications than where we usually are. It's usually the first week of August.
Excellent. If an IEP was requested last school year and the student needs to be evaluated in a classroom setting, how will this work if learning needs to be virtual?
Yeah, so what I would say is that, each child's evaluation situation is unique, and they all have unique timelines. And so without knowing a little more information there, I'm a little reticent to answer that one, other than to say, please, reach out to your child's school psychologist assigned to your child's building or your school's principal, and specifically talk through what that, timeline looks like, and then how they can ensure that the classroom evaluation piece is best met.
Thank you. So we're going to take two more questions. Just a reminder, if your question wasn't answered live tonight, we will be posting the questions and the approved health and safety plan to the mtsd.org/RTS page this Tuesday after the school board meeting. Thank you again for your engagement. So here are our final two questions for the evening. We made them tough.
They did.
Can fall sports be moved to the spring?
So that is a great question. Can fall sports be moved to the spring? I think if I could wave my magic wand, that would absolutely be a decision that would be made. But there are so many pieces and many facets to that question. That comes from, areas that are outside of our district control. We really need to know what direction the PIAA is moving in. We need to know, what area or path our governor is moving in terms of that. As of now, sports do remain open, and we are able to have our student teams for the fall practicing. But it's certainly something that we need to continue to look at and evaluate. I think you'll also see that happening over the next several weeks as we look at what's happening with national teams, collegiate leagues. Many decisions are being made. So I think there will be things that trickle down to the high school level, but at this time, that is a decision outside of our purview.
Okay. So this one's less of a question and more of an additional idea to think about here. Would we be willing to look at an AACBB schedule, which could help mitigate the spread with Wednesday being the C day? This way we would have more time to clean in between.
Yeah, we actually have looked at a variety of models, in having that midweek day as a break. We have looked at the one piece that didn't end up being the most attractive option for us was that it really only allowed us that one day. Where if we bookended a virtual day on either a Monday or Friday, it gave us a 3-day window for a really solid deep clean. So we have investigated that. It's not something that's not off the table, but the reason that we really look at a Friday or a Monday scenario was to give us a 3-week amount of time without people in the buildings for that disinfection piece.
Okay. So that's all the time we have for questions tonight. Darcy, if you'd like to close up for us.
Yes, so I would first like to thank everybody for tuning in this evening. We so appreciate the parental support that we have had over the last several months and that you have continued to give us. Please know that the district administration and the school board is working night and day to make sure that we have the best and most successful start to the year as possible. It's really going to be only through everyone's investment of time, energy, and support that we can make sure that that is a success. Throughout the evening, we've had 65 questions that we've covered in the last hour or so, and we've had over 800 people tuning in to watch. So we are really excited about that. We certainly wish that it was a night where we were all out on the football field and, able to have done this with you personally, versus having to have done it kind of in this socially distanced environment that's virtual. But if nothing else, as I'd said at the top of the show, it is a way for us to model, best practice and help, make sure that we're following guidelines and really, be flexible, and ensure that everyone is safe and comfortable. So as we move forward, one of the buzzwords that has been out there from the start, in terms of meetings and in conversations that have taken place across the state is that idea of flexibility. So hopefully in our message tonight, you have heard that, whether it's us talking about choices parents will have, or options, or flexibility with absences, flexibility in meeting students' needs. we really want to make this, as meaningful and successful as possible. So it's important for all of us to kind of keep that word at the heart of the start to the school year. So thank you.
Darcy, I want to thank you personally for leading this task force and our 4 chairs. Mr. O'Toole, who was not able to be with us tonight, Mr. Scott Quivy, Officer Nate Spiker, and Dr. John Kavanaugh. We appreciate you stepping up and doing this and leading this. It's a lot of work. Just a reminder to everyone, if you submitted a question this evening and we were not able to answer it during the live event, it will still be presented to the task force to be included in the updated FAQs. You'll be able to see those at www.mtsd.org/RTS following the Monday school board meeting, which will be held this Monday, July 27th at 6 p.m. I would encourage all of you to participate in it if you have an opinion. We would love to hear that. At that meeting, we will be reviewing the health and safety plan presented by the district to the board, and we will hopefully be approving that plan that evening, and we will share the plan and the choices available to our families upon approval. And like we said earlier, please follow the official MTSD social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and at Mill Creek SD. Thank you all very much, and have a good night.